My name is Emily Porter, and if you had asked me a year ago whether a single conversation could change the direction of an entire life, I probably would have smiled politely and said something vague like, well, anything is possible. I never used to put much weight on emotional turning points. I always assumed life moved mostly through slow steps, mostly predictable, mostly manageable. But I learned very recently that sometimes, without warning, you are handed a moment so full of truth that it feels like a spotlight has been turned on inside your own heart. And my moment began the day my longtime family friend, Mark Bennett, knocked on my door with a wish he'd been holding onto for too many years. Mark wasn't related to us by blood. Not by marriage, not by anything official. He was just one of those men, the kind who had been around long enough to be family even if it wasn't written on paper. He'd grown up with my late husband, Michael. They'd been best friends since childhood, inseparable through school, through good decisions and bad, through every life stage that mattered. When Michael passed away 5 years ago from a sudden illness, Mark didn't disappear the way many people do when grief feels overwhelming. No, he showed up more. Quietly, steadily, respectfully. He would mow the lawn without asking, fix the porch light without a word, bring over groceries if he noticed I hadn't shopped in a while. And while I always told him he didn't need to do any of that, he simply nodded, gave one of his small half-smiles, and continued anyway. So when he showed up on my porch on an early spring afternoon, hands stuffed deep in the pockets of his old navy jacket, shoulders tight the way they get when he's nervous, I knew this wasn't one of his simple drop-ins. Something was different. He didn't step inside at first. Instead, he stared at the floorboards as if they held the script he couldn't quite read. "Emily," he said finally, "I need to ask you something. And I hope you'll hear me out before you say anything." I invited him inside, made him tea the way he liked it, 2 sugars, no fuss, and sat across from him at the kitchen table. He didn't touch the tea for the first few minutes. Then he finally lifted his gaze, and I saw something I wasn't expecting. Fear, not the loud kind, the quiet kind that lives behind the eyes. "I've been carrying something for a long time," he said softly. "And I think it's time I finally face it. But I can't do it alone." "What is it?" I asked gently. He reached into his jacket pocket. His hand shook. Not dramatically, but enough to make me straighten in my chair. He pulled out an envelope that looked older than I could guess. The edges were soft, the paper yellowed slightly, like it had been opened and reopened 100 times. "This is from Michael," he said. I froze. From my husband. But Michael had been gone for years. How? When? "He gave it to me," Mark said, "and told me to hold on to it. He said I'd know when the right time was to give it to you." I stared at the envelope. My heart seemed to forget how to beat for several seconds. Why would Michael leave me a letter and not give it to me himself? Why would he ask Mark to hold it for so long? And why now? Mark placed the envelope on the table between us. He didn't push it toward me. He didn't rush me. He simply let it sit there like a bridge I wasn't sure I wanted to cross. "Mark," I whispered, "why didn't you give this to me earlier?" "Because he asked me not to." His voice cracked for the first time. "He said I'd know when you were ready. And I think you're ready now." I swallowed hard, fingers trembling as I reached for the envelope. My name was written on the front in Michael's handwriting, steady, neat, familiar enough to make my breath hitch. The letter inside was short. But it contained something I never expected. Michael wrote about memories, about his love for me, his hopes for my future. And then, near the end, he added a single line that changed everything. "If Mark ever needs help with something he's too ashamed or afraid to ask for, please give him the same loyalty he's given me all our lives." I wiped away tears that fell before I even realized they had escaped. "What does this mean?" I asked. Mark exhaled slowly, as though he had been holding that breath for years. "I have a wish, Emily," he said. "A wish I never had the courage to say out loud. And before you worry, it's nothing dramatic. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing that crosses any boundaries. I'd never do that to you. Or to him." I nodded, waiting. He looked at his hands. "I want to finish something Michael and I started. Something important to both of us. But I can't do it alone. I need your help." "What is it?" I whispered. He cleared his throat, and for the first time since he arrived, he looked directly at me with determined eyes. "I want to rebuild the old community center." I blinked, stunned. The community center, our neighborhood's long-abandoned, weather-beaten building, had been closed for nearly 12 years after a fire damaged the interior. Michael and Mark had always dreamed of helping restore it someday. I remembered them talking about it often, making big plans they never had time to carry out once work, life, and responsibilities took over. You want to rebuild that? I asked softly. He nodded. It was Michael's favorite idea. And mine. And I want to finish it. For him. For the kids in the neighborhood. For the families who need a safe place. But most of all, his voice thinned. For my own peace. I didn't answer right away. This wasn't the request I expected. I'd been bracing for something heavy, something painful, but instead he had brought me something deeply meaningful. Something worthy, something hopeful, and suddenly, Michael's wish made sense. He wanted me to help Mark finish something good. Something that mattered. And the truth was, I needed something to matter too. After years of drifting in and out of my own life, half present and half lost in the shadows of grief, I needed a purpose again. So I nodded. Yes, I said softly. I'll help you. Mark's shoulders dropped as though I'd just removed a weight he'd been carrying on his back for a decade. His eyes glistened, but he blinked the shine away quickly. Thank you, he whispered. You have no idea what this means. But over time, I would learn exactly what it meant. And it would change both of our lives forever.